Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the parties involved in project finance deals. We've talked a bit about the concept of project finance, talked about the meaning of project finance. We're going to talk about now the parties involved in a typical project finance deal. So there are four types of key parties that are often involved in a typical project finance transaction. So the one is the sponsoring contractors. So these are contractors. The sponsoring contractors are basically interested in participating in the effort by contributing equity and subordinated debt. Subordinated debt can be in the form of shareholders' debt, which will be subordinated to the funding that will be provided for the project itself. Contractors also help to develop, build, and operate the plants. The developer assumes the risk of planning, creating, and building a project. They are basically responsible for acquiring all the essential licenses, the legal permissions to complete the project. So, for example, where the project involves the establishment of a gas plant under the PIA in Nigeria, there is a requirement for a license to build or to establish a gas plant, for that license to be obtained from the NMDPR, right? So the sponsors, the project sponsors, will have to ensure that licenses of that nature are obtained for the project company. Then aside the sponsoring contractors, we have the financial investors. So the financial investors are basically motivated to put money into high profit ventures. So they tend to take risks and want a significant return on their investments. They act as the assets operators, operating and caring for it after construction. Right? These include overseeing the employees, managing day-to-day operations, and it may also involve marketing initiatives to guarantee optimal utilization of available capacity. So even if they are not actively involved in the day-to-day management, they supervise the activities that goes on in the project. And the reason is because they have put money into the project and they want to ensure that they get sufficient return on investments. Projects of this nature can be very risky, and the financial investors come together, lend to the project, and with the intention that the monies generated from the project will be used to repay the loan they have made available for the development of the project. So for that reason, they will want to monitor the project to ensure that everything is done properly, so as to ensure that the monies they've invested in the project does not go down the drain, to ensure that they get both the monies they have put into the project and interest. Then there's also the industrial sponsors. The industrial sponsors find the connection between the program and their primary business. They provide products and services to finish building projects on schedule and within budget. These parties are frequently hired as subcontractors by developers or operators. For example, like I mentioned, there's going to be a gas plant, and that project is to be financed in using a project finance structure, right? The license to establish the gas plant is obtained pursuant to the provisions of the PIA, if you're looking at it from a Nigerian perspective. And after establishing it, then the license to operate it will also be obtained. And once it comes into operation, or even before it comes into operation, the process of building the gas plant, the project sponsors will not be able to do that alone. They have to subcontract some of the works to subcontractors. So these subcontractors are key players in a project finance deal, right? So because a failure of a subcontractor to perform ultimately affects the project in itself, and that also has a ripple effect on the lenders, because when the project is uncompleted, the project will not be in operation, and it will not yield profit, it will not yield money, it will not generate revenue, and then the monies borrowed won't be repaid, right? So everything falls down like a pack of cards. So they are also very important. They are an important party in a project finance structure. Then you also have the regulators, right? In a project finance structure, in a project finance deal, there are regulators, and these are typically government authorities, government agencies that regulate the aspects of the project, and depending on the area the project or the industry the project is in, right? So for example, in the oil and gas industry, like I mentioned, let's say a project is involves the establishment of a gas plant, the establishment and the operation of a gas plant. One would have to, the project sponsors will have to interface with the NMDPR, for several licenses, and the NMDPR will have to monitor the establishment, the building of the construction of the gas plant, the operations generally, and all of that. And again, let's say the project involves the construction of a bridge, right? The project sponsor will definitely have interactions with regulators of government, like the Ministry of Works, right? If it's a federal project, the Federal Ministry of Works. If it's a state project, in the case of Nigeria, the Ministry of Work in the relevant states. If it's a toll road, right? Let's say a highway that's going to have a toll. Of course, you also have to interface with the regulators and get the necessary licenses, right? The licenses are very, very important, because failure to obtain the requisite license can lead to problems between the project company, the project sponsors, and the government. So take, for example, the project involves the building of an estate, right? Let's say low-cost housing estate, and the lenders have put in money into the project. The project sponsors have set up the SPV, and the construction of the buildings progresses. Now, before you build any structure, let's say in a state like Lagos, in all states basically in Nigeria, you need what we call the building permit. So imagine the project company goes ahead to build this estate without obtaining building permit. One of the consequences of building without obtaining building permit is that the building can be pulled down by the government, by the regulator. So that poses a very great risk, and that's the reason why it is important to interface with regulators to obtain, in the case of a building construction, the building licenses and all the licenses required, and in the case of other projects in other sectors, interface with the relevant agencies and the relevant regulator to obtain the relevant licenses, right? And of course, these are some of the things that the lawyers will do in the course of the due diligence, lenders counsel will do in the course of the due diligence. They want to ensure that all the licenses relevant for the operation or for the construction of that project has been obtained. So that's one of the relevant parties. Indeed, there are other parties in a project finance deal, in a project finance structure, but we just had to mention a few. In our subsequent discussion, we'll mention others. Please drop your comments, your questions, and let us also know the areas of the law you want to also talk about that are very relevant and important to you. Don't forget to like the video, share the video for others to learn, and also subscribe. Subscription is free. Thank you. See you in our next class.